You hear it all the time, right? The word fascism. It's everywhere. But what does it actually mean when someone gets called a fascist? Are we talking about a serious historical warning, or has it just become, the ultimate political insult?
I mean, think about it. On one hand, you've got these really serious historians and scholars, and they're warning us that the patterns, the playbook of fascism, might be reemerging today. But then on the other hand, it's just this word people throw around online when they're angry about, well, pretty much anything. It's that confusion, that big question mark that we're going to tackle right now.
Okay, so let's be super clear. The goal here is not to slap a label on anyone or anything happening today. Nope. Instead, what we're going to do is give you the tools to see things clearly for yourself. We're going to go back to the beginning, to the, let's call it the source code of fascism. Where did it come from? How did it actually work? What were the steps it took to grab power? Once you see that, you can make up your own mind about what's happening in the world.
All right, so to do that, we have to travel back in time to that really strange, chaotic 25-year period, that gap between the two world wars. After World War I ended in 1918, Europe was just an absolute wreck. We're talking millions dead, economies completely shattered. And in places like Italy and Germany, there was this profound sense of being cheated, of being humiliated. It was the perfect storm, really, the perfect breeding ground for some new, extreme, and pretty dangerous ideas to start taking root.
And that brings us right to the guy who literally wrote the book on this stuff, Benito Mussolini. Seriously, to understand fascism, you have to start with him.
So, imagine you're in post-war Italy. The world feels broken, and everyone's looking for a big answer. And there are basically two radical ideas on the table. Over on one side, you've got communism, which was this huge deal after the Russian Revolution. It was all about class struggle, about workers of the world uniting. But then, there was this other thing brewing. A totally different kind of revolution. It was aggressive, it was ultranationalist, and it was led by guys like Mussolini, war veterans who said forget class, the only thing that matters is the nation.
Mussolini's whole worldview was basically forged in the mud and violence of the World War I trenches. He came up with this idea he called trenchocracy. His argument was that the sheer brutality of war didn't just destroy people, it actually created a new kind of person, a superior elite hardened by combat. And he believed these men, the aristocratic of the trenches, were the only ones tough enough to rule, and they should sweep away all the weak, talking politicians of democracy.
And this is where the word fascism actually comes from. Mussolini looked back to ancient Rome and grabbed one of their symbols, the fascio. Now, fascio just means a bundle. The idea is pretty simple, right? A single stick? Easy to break. But a whole bundle of sticks bound together? That's strong. Then you strap an axe to it, and it's not just about strength anymore. It's a symbol of power and punishment. And that became the logo for his whole movement, fascismo. It stood for unity, strength, and the power to crush anyone who stood in the way.
And using this idea, he put together a kind of playbook for taking power, a formula that could be repeated. Step 1, glorify violence. He had these gangs called the Black Shirts who would just go out and beat up his political opponents. Step 2, get the rich and powerful on your side. Wealthy landowners, big business owners, they were terrified of a communist revolution, so they actually funded Mussolini's thugs to break up workers' strikes. The police, the army, they often just looked the other way. Step 3, use the system to get in. He actually got invited into the government by mainstream politicians who thought, hey, we can control this guy. Big mistake. Because step 4 was to destroy democracy from the inside. Once he was in, he got himself made prime minister, then immediately started getting rid of all other parties, shutting down the press, and canceling elections. Which leads to the final step, absolute power. He became the dictator, demanding everyone follow one simple slogan: believe, obey, fight.
Now, at the same time, over in Germany, which was feeling even more defeated and humiliated, there was another angry war veteran who was watching Mussolini's every move and taking notes. His name, of course, was Adolf Hitler, and he was about to take that exact same playbook and push it to a level of horror nobody could have imagined.
Hitler's entire movement was built on a single, powerful lie, the Dolchstoß myth, the stab in the back. The story went like this. Germany never really lost the war on the battlefield. No, they were betrayed. They were stabbed in the back by traitors at home, by the weak democratic politicians, by the communists, and, most central to his entire worldview, by Jewish people.
And this is the absolute crucial addition he made to Mussolini's formula. Hitler added a toxic, all-consuming obsession with race. He cooked up this entire mythology of a pure Aryan master race, and then blamed every single one of Germany's problems on a global conspiracy run by what he called the impure Jewish race. This racial ideology wasn't a side project. It was the absolute core of Nazism.
And just look at how he did it. He followed Mussolini's playbook, step for step. It's almost uncanny. It started with glorifying violence, with his brown shirt gangs doing exactly what the black shirts did in Italy. Then he got elite support, especially after the Great Depression, from big industrialists who were way more scared of communism than they were of Hitler. Next, he used democracy to get his foot in the door. The mainstream conservatives made him chancellor because they thought they could control him. Sound familiar? And from there, he destroyed democracy from within, using a fire at the Parliament building as an excuse to declare a national emergency and suspend all basic rights. And finally, of course, he achieved absolute power as the Führer. The pattern, it's identical. So, okay, that's the history. That's the original playbook. And once you see that pattern laid out so clearly, it makes you ask the question, right? What about today? Are we seeing any echoes of these steps playing out in our world right now?
Well, if you look at the global data, there's definitely a worrying trend line. For the first time in a long time, the number of what we call liberal democracies, countries with free elections and strong protections for individual rights, is actually going down. At the exact same time, the number of autocracies, where one person or a small group has all the power, is going up. So yeah, something is definitely shifting in the world.
But here's the million-dollar question. Is that shift fascism? And the honest answer is, well, even the experts who spend their entire lives studying this stuff can't agree on a single answer. And I think understanding why they disagree is actually the key to thinking about this whole thing intelligently.
You can basically break the expert debate down into three main camps. The first group says, no, not yet. Their argument is that it's not technically fascism until democracy is completely and totally destroyed. They might call it wannabe fascism, but the line hasn't been crossed. The second group says, no, it's something totally new. They argue that today's strongman leaders don't want to get rid of democracy entirely, they just want to warp it. They keep the elections, but strip away all the rights. They call this illiberal democracy. And then there's a third group. They say, yes, the pattern fits. They argue that, of course, 21st century fascism isn't going to look exactly like the 1930s version, but the core playbook, the scapegoating, the mythic nationalism, the leader cult, it's all coming back.
So you see, the point of all this isn't so you can go out and win an argument online by using the right label. It's not about the word. It's about recognizing the patterns. It's about knowing what the historical warning signs look like when you see them.
So let's just boil it all down. What are those core patterns we need to watch for? Number 1, a glorification of violence and the military. 2, an obsession with a mythic golden age past that probably never existed. 3, blaming all of a nation's problems on a scapegoat, whether it's an ethnic minority or some other outsider. 4, a single charismatic leader who claims that they and only they are the true voice of the people. 5, mainstream establishment elites who decide to tolerate or even help the extremists because they're more afraid of their opponents on the left. And finally, number 6, using the very tools and systems of democracy with the secret ultimate goal of tearing them down from the inside. Those are the red flags that history has handed to us.
And here's one final, kind of sobering thought to leave you with. If you look at the grand sweep of human history, things like domination, hierarchy, and violence, that's been the norm. This experiment we're living in with liberal democracy, this idea of an open, free, and basically equal society, it's actually the exception. It's a fragile, recent invention.
Because those darker human instincts, the urge for control, the desire for vengeance, the appeal of a strong leader who will punish your enemies, those things don't just vanish. They're always with us, just below the surface, waiting for the right moment. And that really leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Knowing the playbook, seeing the patterns, are we immune?